When did you realize your partner was an idiot? Story 1. On a camping trip. She was worried about parking the car on the grass because she thought the grass was going to grow, puncturing and flattening the tires. Reply 1. Reminds me of my brother. He's a car buff with crap car knowledge. When we were in high school, he was working on his Mustang 5.0. He changed the head gasket with me watching and got the cheapest sealant at AutoZone. It was for windshields. He said it's okay, because all sealants are waterproof. But while he was reassembling the engine, he was filling up the radiator, and I noticed he didn't have antifreeze. I mentioned it to him, and he said, "We don't need antifreeze in Florida, dumbass." I told him that it's not just for the cold weather, but it also raises the boiling temp. He said, "That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. If that was true, they'd have called it anti-boil, dumbass." He blew the head gasket less than a week later. Reply 2. I bet her parents definitely didn't want her parking on grass at home, and Dad made a joke like this, and she just believed it. Reply 3. When I was in kindergarten, we were told to put up a show. And the teacher thought we would all look nice with lipsticks, even the boys. So she told us the lipstick is really poisonous to prevent us from licking it off. It goes without saying half of us forgot our lines while secretly panicking, "We are going to die." Reply 4. Why do so many adults think that the best way to teach a child is to lie to them about things being poisonous? My grandma once told me the white part on the top of the strawberry was poisonous. Her logic was that she didn't want me sticking the whole thing, leaves and all, into my mouth, I guess. Instead, I had a minor anxiety attack, legitimately thinking I was going to die soon because I knew I'd accidentally eaten some of the white part in the past. I was very young, but I still remember the horrifying feeling of just waiting to see if I'd gotten a fatal dose and would die soon. Story 2. My husband thought people whistled when they set off fireworks. He didn't realize the fireworks themselves whistled, though that was one of his more harmless stupidities. Reply 1. Made me think of how I read once that when deaf people hear for the first time, a lot of them think the sun made a sound. Reply 2. I, a deaf person, often question this, to be honest. I've only seen this said by a deaf, hard of hearing person twice, I think. One was in an old children's book, and one was on Reddit. Nobody I know in real life has ever said this. Probably because I feel a lot of people don't make this connection when they post stuff like this. For the majority of us, the first time we hear something with our residual hearing, hearing aids, and/or cochlear implants is when we were young children. We may not always remember our thought process when we get our hearing aids/cochlear implants. I know I don't remember it at all because I was a toddler when I got my hearing aids, so if one did really think they would be hearing the sun, they were likely a small child. The one from a book was talking about when he was a little kid. Just your typical silly kid stuff. Most deaf adults have basic understanding of sound, even if they don't have residual hearing or wear hearing aids, cochlear implants, due to seeing what other people say about sound or respond to sound, so I'd be very confused if many deaf adults think this way. That's just my experience, though. Reply 3. My girlfriend and I were at a barbecue and said goodbye, heading to watch fireworks at the beach. My sister asked where we would park and watch. We explained, and she said, "Just making sure you don't end up on the wrong side," which confused me. I asked what she meant. She went on to explain, fireworks are only visible from one direction and they wouldn't look right from anywhere else. I assured her that most designs explode outward and watching from any side would be the same, but thanked her for her concern. We were maybe early 30s and she's a teacher, so it wasn't little kid stuff or anything. Bonus, her new house has a gentle curve to the backyard, and she mentioned she wishes it was flat, but that's just the curve of the earth, so they can't do much about it. I was dumbfounded as it's a normal small yard and absolutely not affected by the curve of the earth, just needs some leveling. Story 3. My boyfriend refused to eat basil I had bought from the grocery store because it was a full plant. I was keeping it outside, and he insisted that he would not eat dirty food. I asked where he thought farmers kept produce, and he said that they has special areas for food to grow that was sterilized, but my plant was not food grade. I just looked at him with a dumbfounded look. I didn't know how to respond. Reply 1. My husband is the same way. I had grown so many lovely strawberries, and he flat out refused to eat them because they were outside and had, at some point, touched dirt. I too asked him how he thought the food we buy came into existence, but his answer was just vaguely disgusted. Not like that. Reply 2. I am so sorry if this sounds rude, but I have to know. Why are you with him? Is he somehow smarter about different things? He can't have a high IQ with that sort of reasoning. Is he, like, very handsome or incredibly kind? I know not everyone is turned on by intelligence, but certainly at some point the lack of it is a turn-off. Again, this isn't mean-spirited. I just met a lot of married, not smart people, as in to the point where you just wonder, and I can't comprehend, not being turned off by severe lack of reasoning. I don't mean book knowledge, but a refusal to learn, which seems to be the case here. It is one thing to be wrong or uneducated, and another to absolutely refuse to learn. Reply 3. Nah, honestly, that's what makes it funny to me. He's actually a very logical person and always up for a good debate. I know you just have to take my word for it here, but he actually is quite intelligent. It came totally out of left field. I have decided it's sort of like me with meat. Like, I understand how meat gets to a grocery store, but I prefer to be removed from the process. I think he just does not like to think about the possibility of eating dirt. Reply 4. Do you not have farms around at all? I was just looking into going to a farm about an hour away from me that sells pretty much everything. They have like 30 peach varieties and they let you try them, so I'm about to go on a quest to find the perfect peach. We got strawberry farms where you pay $10 for a bucket to fill up yourself straight from the plant. Story 4. He thought potatoes never go bad because his mom always kept a bag in the pantry. I asked him if they ate a lot of potatoes and he said yes. They have a large family with 6 kids and it still didn't click. Reply 1. I met a girl many years ago. I thought she was cute and wanted to date her. She thought I was handsome. I often talk to her on the phone, but then I realized she tells me this is delicious. That is delicious every time. And talks about food all the time. At first I was with her, only to realize that we really had nothing to talk about other than eating, and finally I chose not to contact her anymore. Story 5. I bought fresh broccoli and my husband asked why I got such a huge broccoli and not the normal smaller ones. He thought broccoli naturally comes in bite-sized florets. Reply 1. My husband was buying broccoli based on a good stalk. He came home with this absolutely raggedy one that costs more than normal as it's by weight. He even knows we use the top, and yes, I'm aware you can use the stalk. But why on earth would you pick it based on the stalk and not the florets? Reply 2. My wife was ill and asked me to make her dinner. She just got a bunch of asparagus, and I asked if that would be good to include. So I cooked up the asparagus. I cut off the little rooty bits because they're root style, and I cut off the tops, of course, wouldn't want to eat those. I brought her food to her, and she went, "Where are the tops of the asparagus?" The trash? My wife, I married a freaking idiot. Reply 3. I placed an online order with my local grocery store for them to shop for me, and I would just pick it up. When I got the groceries back home, I opened up the produce bag that was supposed to have my 1 crown of broccoli, and instead, it had 1 little floret. It was so damn funny, I couldn't even be pissed. I'll never forget the sight of that sad, forlorn, solo floret of broccoli that whoever shopped for my order thought constituted a crown. Reply 4. My brother made dinner on one of his first few dates with his now wife. He'd never made broccoli before and thought they only had giant broccolis available at the store, so he bought 2 of them and cooked them both whole without cutting them into smaller pieces. She was so confused to see a big steak and an even bigger broccoli on her plate. Reply 5. Broccoli can come in bite-sized pieces. The first ones come out huge like a broccoli monster, but being a cold weather plant, it's saving up for when it gets hotter to seed. It gets cut out before it can go to seed though, and then afterwards you might get another big broccoli, if the weather cooperates. But either way, when it starts getting hotter, it springs out a bunch of smaller broccoli to cut off before they go to seed. As it gets hotter, the broccolis get smaller until there are just too many that are too small to deal with. In my area, broccoli is pulled away before they're so small to plant the next vegetable for spring. Still get a bunch of bite-sized broccolis though. Reply 6. My dad told a story about the first time he asked my mother to go get carrots from the garden. She went out and came back and said, "They're not ready yet. There is just 1 carrot on each of them." She had never noticed that carrots in stores were held together with some kind of wire in a bundle, and just assumed they grew that way. My mother wasn't dumb though. She was a city girl though, and had a bit of a culture shock apparently when she went to live in a small village. Reply 7. This is really common actually. I work at a U-pick farm and people will go to the broccoli row and pick all the tiny growing broccoli instead of the big, huge ones. Broccoli is $3 per head, which is reasonable because usually people just get 1 or 2 big heads and the plants only give us 1 head. So imagine their faces when I tell them they spent like $30 on their 10 tiny premature heads of broccoli. We have signs everywhere saying, "If you don't know, ask." Story 6. My husband was convinced that bees and wasps are the same thing, just at different times of the year. He thought bees grew up into wasps during the summer. I love him, but how? Reply 1. I once had a guy ask, "What do worms turn into?" I wasn't dating him, we are both guys, but I looked at him like, what the F? But he explained, "Caterpillars turn into butterflies, so do worms turn into what? Snakes?" I get his logic in a weird way, but wow, that was weird. Reply 2. When we went to Bali last summer, we tried to tell staff at our retreat that there were wasps congregating under a chair at the pool. They didn't know the word wasps. We described them, and they were like, "Oh, bees." And we kept trying to say wasps. Reply 3. When I was like 5, I thought cardinals and blue jays were the same bird. The blue jays being the boys, and cardinals being the girls. Kind of like how the original Mortal Kombat Scorpion and Sub-Zero looked the same, just different accent colors, so they must be brothers. And the reptile was like the older brother away at college most of the time. Reply 4. Thinking that bees and wasps are the same thing is far more common than people realize. In one place, I was working a guy who said he kept bees was always calling the wasps, hornets, and yellow jackets bees, and didn't seem to know the difference, even when looking at them up close. It's further complicated because in many languages there is no separate word for bee and wasp. Both are referred to by the same general word. Same with hawk, eagle, turtle, tortoise, frog, a toad, and quite a few more things. Reply 5. As someone who grew up in the rural American South and was stung by both many times, I learned the difference early on. Every time I was stung by a bee, I either accidentally hit it by grabbing a pole it was on, or it had trouble flying and landing on me, already agitated. They sting once, it's a minor pain, poor guys pass away shortly after. Now these no-good, lanky-ass, devious-looking, sci-fi horror guys we call wasps, half the time have zero reason to sting. First time one of them got in my shirt somehow, understandably scared, but I wasn't moving at all. And all of a sudden I felt a bad pain in my side, and I couldn't figure out what it was. While I was showing my family and trying to figure it out, it crawled out of my shirt collar and was right by my face just after stinging me. New fear unlocked. Second time, I was at a friend's house at their pool, climbing up the ladder of a water slide. Boom wasp immediately flies up to me, lands on my face, stings just below my eye, / on the orbital bone. I didn't swipe at him or even have time to be belligerent or scare him. Dumb idiot. And don't even get me started on scorpions. Like the time this is rural Arkansas, the only scorpions here are tiny compared to, say, Arizona, got in my shorts, stung my thigh twice, and after I noticed it and flung it off me, my scaredy-ass older brother who knew I already had a fear of scorpions made me kill it after already being stung. Tail-daughter bees are the only cool MFs with stingers. Y'all were too pure to be saddled with that sting once and die crap. You're chill compared to your angry cousins. Except when y'all jump people as a family from the hive. That's not really cool. Story 7. A girl I was trying to date told me that Spain is part of Latin America. And when I informed her that it is in Europe, she doubled down by saying she was a Latin American studies student and that I was wrong. Reply 1. Dude, a few years ago I was talking to my grandma and she swore to me that we were from South America. I said no. Grandma, you and I are Portuguese, that is in Europe. She got mad at me and left the conversation because she has thought her entire life that Portugal is in South America. She has always lived in California, and that's where I grew up too. She always talks about her Portuguese heritage too, having no freaking clue where it is located. She was 85-ish at the time, so she had no business not knowing. Reply 2. My wife's cousin dated a girl who would say the stupidest stuff, and then think that the made-up things she said were true. She once asked my wife and I where Detroit was. We both told her that there are probably more than one city named Detroit, but the one everyone usually refers to is in Michigan. Then she told us that, no, the popular one is in Iowa. Reply 3. I was telling a story about how someone I knew thought they had French ancestry and then 23 and me and found out they were Spanish. The person I was telling was like, wow, those are completely different. How could they not know? I was like, well, the countries are literally next to each other, so it's not super out of the realm of possibility. And he was like, no, Spanish people aren't white. Reply 4. I went to school with a girl from Mozambique, and she told us that the correct term for her ethnicity was African American. Someone asked her if she had any roots in America, and she said no. Couldn't understand why we were saying she would be African then, not African American then. TBH, I see this one as poor race education in a mainly white country, so she was just learning from the US. Reply 5. Working as a waiter a long time ago, I heard a medical student, she worked there part-time as a waitress, say if you want a hot Mexican, go to Spain. Same girl actively tried to turn a gay guy straight and accidentally put her buddy's contacts in over her own. She thought that the other woman's contact prescription was very strong, never realizing she would have had to have contacts in order to see her friend's contacts in the first place. Reply 6. She could have been somewhat close to right if she remembered that Latin America has the word America in it. Latin America stems back to the fact that the newly formed countries in North, Central, and South America spoke languages that originated from Latin and were predominantly Catholic, which also uses Latin as the official language. However, Spain is not part of the Americas, so she was wrong. What an idiot. Reply 7. My ex-wife and her entire family claimed to be fully Italian because the grandpa was from Italy and married a Polish woman who had no ties to her culture, so she adapted the persona of an Italian woman to make the grandpa happy. To double down the stupidity, they also claimed to have gotten their dark hair from their Sicilian blood, because that's how northern Italians look. I knew better than to argue with them, because they were all belligerent idiots and a few drug addicts. But when we got in the car, I asked my wife to please re-explain the conversation, and she did with total confidence. I then pulled out Google Maps and explained why her and her family are dumbasses. She even then claimed I was wrong and just not understanding her family. Story 8. Found out she was eating half-cooked pre-made pot pies because she broiled every meal in the oven instead of baking it. She told me she hated that her oven burnt the top of each one and left the bottom doughy. She would eat the uncooked dough regardless. Reply 1. My cooking idiocy when I first moved out was when something would ask for medium heat. I'd just turn the dial halfway on the stove and leave it there. Didn't matter what kind of pan or what I was making, I wouldn't adjust medium for the quantity of food or anything. I just threw away a lot of Big Lots pans that I burned the bottoms of. Story 9. My partner was grunting and groaning at the bin. He said, "We need new bin bags. These ones you've bought don't bloody fit." Went over to see what was going on, and he had a roll of small black dog poop bags in his hand with one unfurled, trying to work out why it wouldn't fit in the bin. There were bin bags. He'd just picked up the wrong roll and instead of realizing, tried to get a dog poop bag in a bin 50 times bigger. Reply 1. I was a cat sitting for my parents, and on my way out, I decided to be nice and empty the kitchen garbage for them. It was a pain in the neck to get the new bag in the can, but I did it. Got a call from my mother the next day asking how I managed to do what I did. I had forgotten that there was a plastic ring that went over the part where the bag goes to smooth it out, and it had fallen back into the opening when I was walking the full bag out to the trash. I had unnecessarily stretched the bag over the ring to put it on, annoyed the entire time that the bag wasn't big enough. But even me and my idiocy knows the difference between a trash bag and a pet poo bag. Story 10. More cute than anything, but I'm half French, and my current English GF said to be 2 months into dating. I love you, but why the F ** K do you keep calling me bunny when we go to sleep? It's really weird. Bonne nuit, I was saying goodnight in French. Anyways, I call her bunny all the time now just to annoy her. Reply 1. This reminds me of an exchange my mom and I had when I was about 3. I don't remember this, but she thought it was hilarious and brings it up to this day. Mom, tucking me in. Do you have your hanky handy? Me. Asterisk stares in silence. Asterisk mom, mildly confused. Do you have your hanky handy? Me furious. Yes, but why are you calling me handy? Reply 2. The first date I went on with my ex, I said I love Brand New, referring to the band. She looked at me, taken aback, and I was like, don't you? And she said, I just met you. I was so confused. But then, after time, the first time I told her I loved her, and that's what I meant. I said I love Brand New. I still think it's the only time in my life I've ever been cute. Oh, I should have clarified. She thought I said I love you, not I love Brand New. That was important to the story. Reply 3. I confused my boyfriend when we were freshly dating by saying Spock to him when going to sleep. I was saying the short form for Spockoin Nachi, or however you transcribe it, which just means good night. He wondered if I was randomly comparing him to this Star Trek character. Also, when I cooked a meal, I'd yell, Kushit Gatova, food is ready, which he thought I was saying Kaush * T. In the country we live in, the word for cow is even pronounced the same as in kushit. So cue the jokes about me serving him cow crap to eat. He wasn't being an idiot about any of it, but your comment reminded me of that. Fun times. Story 11. There was this girl that kept faxing the same document over and over. Eventually, the recipient called to beg her to stop. But it keeps failing, she said. The document keeps coming back out. Reply 1. I used to work in a medical office, and the amount of dumbassery regarding the fax machine is staggering. I was once on the phone trying to walk another person through e-faxing, but was getting nowhere. I started to break down, thought maybe she wasn't even in the same window, had missed a few clicks or something, and asked her where she was. In my chair. The issue was not resolved. Reply 2. Best I had was working at a law firm as an admin. I came across the head partner and a couple of attorneys gathered around the fax machine trying and failing to send a fax. When I got them to walk me through the steps to see where they were going wrong, I learned the partner hadn't been putting in a number to send it to. He'd just been hitting send. Straight up thought the machine would just know where to send it to. Reply 3. Not someone I dated, but someone I worked with. He would print his document to scan it so he can have it as a PDF. When I showed him that he can save it as a PDF, I think I broke his mind. Guy was in his 40s, so not that old. Reply 4, literally just had a conversation last night with my mom because she was complaining about all the old paperwork piling up at her office. Every time she has reports that need to be attached to AP invoices or other receipts, she has to print all the separate documents and scan them back as one package. From there, it's stupid to immediately throw out the physical copy, so I hold on to it. I asked, does the company just not want to pay for the paid version of Adobe that lets you combine PDFs? Turns out she does have the full version. She just didn't know you could do that, so for years she's been printing, manually sorting, scanning, and filing this paperwork away. This is the sole reason my dad bought her a new printer when the office went remote during the pandemic. Reply 5. You don't know what you don't know. I frequently wonder just how much that might apply to something I'm frustrated with. More than once, I have tried to Google a solution, knowing that there has to be one, but can't get anywhere because I don't know the right word or tool name, etc. Then, voila! I see an offhand comment on Reddit or wherever, mentioning a tool name I've never heard of. Look it up, and my world gets easier. A million sites sell the tool, but I didn't know how to find it. The same happened when I first heard the term gaslighting. It can be such a subtle manipulation tactic that it's hard to describe to someone else. I knew my ex-husband was screwing with my mind, but I couldn't describe it to anyone. Discovered the term, and felt a relief and validation like you wouldn't believe. Now it seems people overuse it, so it will probably get changed. Reply 6. I got into a verbal sparring match on the phone with this guy at work once who wanted to pay his dues over the phone. In cash. Said I can't accept cash over the phone. He got more and more belligerent, so finally I was like, okay, we are going to make an exception just this one time for you. Go ahead. Insert the cash. After a very long pause that I forced him to break first, there was this little defeated sigh, and he said he would be dropping by to pay in person. Realtors are freaking dumb, y'all. Story 12. I dated a guy in college who visited me in my rural hometown and asked what the animals in the neighbor's field were. I said cows in a way, you must be crapping me, level of disbelief. He proceeded to tell me they can't be cows because cows are black and white and these animals were all brown. I had to pull up Google to prove to him that brown cows existed. I could maybe understand if he'd been from a city, but he told me he was from a rural suburb, not a city, so I guess he was just an idiot. Reply 1, I grew up in a town with a minimum security prison/work camp. Think like a Cool Hand Luke kind of place. No fences or anything of that sort. It's out in the middle of the woods about 10-15 minutes by car to the nearest town. Everything that isn't wood is farmland. Prisoners are all super low-level drug offenders from the city. They work for a couple weeks or months up to a year and get basically additional credit for time. Anyway, my neighbor was a corrections officer there and said 2 guys escaped one night. They were so low-level the police were not even going to look for them. They'd just put a warrant out and they'd turn up when they turned up. Dudes made it through the woods, about 2 miles, to a field full of cows, didn't know what they were, and if they were dangerous or not, chose not to risk it and went back. Heard that story so many times I lost count, but it still makes me laugh. Reply 2. Oh my god, I sat next to 2 guys and one was explaining to the other that his GF went on a run while they were in his rural hometown and didn't come back for a long time. She apparently ran into a few huge animals and was afraid of how to get around them. She was upset, and he asked her to describe what they were in case they needed to report it or something. They went to where she saw them. They were cows, but not black and white cows. Reply 3. Our daughter had a similar learning experience when she was 8. While we were on a road trip, we came across a field full of Jersey cows, and she exclaimed, "What are those?" while pointing out the window at them. She'd seen cows before, but only Holstein Friesian, since that's what her great-grandfather had on his dairy farm. She's 18 now, and to this day, we make fun jokes about that whenever possible. What are those? Story 13. My husband went to Dollar General for toilet paper. We had maybe $50 to last the week. This man came back with $40 of mango juice because it was on sale and no toilet paper. I drank the juice, but I was awfully salty about it. Story 14. My wife was commenting on a man who we knew dated a lot of women. One day we saw him with his kid. She said, I bet he doesn't even know who the mother is. Reply 1. When I was a young teen, I used to watch Maury and loved the Who's the Baby Daddy episodes. One day I thought to myself, why do they only have Who's the Baby Daddy shows and not Who's the Baby Mama shows? Took a minute, but it dawned on me eventually. And I'm a woman. Story 15. We served in the U.S. Peace Corps together in Uganda. One day it was really sunny out, like we lived within 50 miles of the equator sunny. She says, "The moon is going to be really bright tonight." I asked what she meant, and she said since it's so sunny, the moon is absorbing all the light and will illuminate brighter when it's dark. We argued about this and ended up talking to her mother on the phone. She confirmed her daughter's hypothesis. Reply 1. I had a discussion with someone on a date where she was saying how the full moon has a real impact on her body. I was skeptical, so I asked why would the full moon have any impact on her, and she said, "Well, gravity. You know how the moon affects the seas. It must affect the liquids inside of me too," which sounded very logical until I asked, "What exactly do you think is happening when the moon is not full? Where is the rest of the moon and its gravitational pull gone? Like, did she actually think the part of the moon she can't see disappears? It is no longer there? It has no gravitational pull anymore? Lady, do you understand the moon cycle is literally the day-night cycle on the moon, and the illuminated part is just where it's day, and the dark part is where it's night? Do you understand the full moon is always there?" Reply 2. My co-counselor in a cabin full of 11 and 12-year-old girls was a dingbat. She was super sweet, very sincere, but a complete dingbat. Around 1980, no internet. She would believe anything I told her if I said it with a straight face. Ooh, I had fun with her. We had taken our campers on a canoe trip for the afternoon. My co-counselor, who I'll call Liza, and many of our campers were pretty sunburned. At the dining table that evening, I made an offhand comment about everyone sleeping on the dock under the moonlight that night. Liza took the bait. She asked why we would do that. Well, the moon is the opposite of the sun, and the moon absorbs its light from the sun. Every time I get a bad sunburn, I lay out under the moon to make it heal faster. It works. Now, it is important to note here that this was all made up on the spur of the moment. Imagine a picnic table with 12 campers on the sides and Liza and me at each end, and another counselor approaches the table. Mark hears me spinning the story for Liza and immediately backs me up. Yeah, it's a well-known fact that the moon takes the UV rays right back out of your skin. The sun burns, but the moon heals. That night, I only had 2 campers to supervise. The rest of them were laying out on the dock, getting their sunburned little selves healed by the moon, with Liza. They were all amazed at how much it helped. Well, of course it helped. There was a constant cool breeze across their skin down on the water. If they got too hot, they would wake up Liza and jump into the cold lake. Poor Liza had so many sleepless nights that summer with sunburned campers. Don't worry, the water there was only about 18 inches, 0.5 meters, deep, and we strung netting from pole to pole to keep active sleepers from rolling into the water. I may have pulled a few pranks, but I wasn't taking risks with kids' safety. Good times. Story 16. We were getting ready to move, and were going through each room, discussing whether to take or get rid of the furniture. In the bedroom, I remarked that I would like to get new bedside lamps. The ones we had were from his bachelor apartment over a decade ago. He said, "I can see why you'd like new lamps, but it's kind of amazing that the light bulbs have lasted 10 years. Dear gentle reader, the light bulbs had not lasted that long. He just was never the one to change them.